And we're back. Making sure, yep, we're live. Cool. What's up, everyone? Let people get in here. Talking about the running back room today, how the Dolphins running back room will look. Getting towards the end of the preview, because technically rookies reported to training camp today. We just got the news that Mark Perry, undrafted free agent, is on the active/non-football injury list, and then wide receiver Taj Washington is on the active/physically unable to perform list. It's already starting, of course. That can mean multiple things. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later. We'll see how that kind of ends up playing out. But yeah, definitely not ideal to start out. But looking at the running backs, oop, that's bright. Okay, I'm getting flashbanged. But the running back room, pretty simple. Guess we'll also add Ingold probably to this group too, because why not? Hold on, let me move this. See when people get in here. Let me just go to my channel real quick. But yeah, the running back room, feel pretty confident about this group. I feel like they just upgraded overall by adding Jaylen Wright to the room. I think, he's just a better third option than what they had last year. Also gives you more of a, he still fits within like the system, like his skill set, the speed, and all of those things that you like. Can get downhill. I think he even adds a little bit more with like the inside zone gap stuff. That's where he has a lot of experience. And I think he's also a bigger body that can probably take a little more hits to, potentially keep Mostert and Achane a little more healthy. That always is going to be helpful. But yeah, your top three guys, Mostert, Achane, Wright. I think you're going to see more of Achane as a receiving role, which is great too. Another added factor to this room, seeing more of him. And then after that, it's pretty much same bodies other than that with you. Chris Brooks made it as the roster as an undrafted guy last year. You still have Jeff Wilson around, Salman Ahmed. Probably... two of those three won't make the roster for sure. Possibly all three, depending on how it all shakes out. And then Alec Ingold is technically will be like counting a part of that room. Yeah, let me just move this. Oop, that's loud. Yeah, we'll start with. We'll just go down the depth chart, and obviously it has Mostert listed first. Mostert will probably be considered the starter, and I'm sure there will be games where he definitely gets the most touches. But I wouldn't be surprised, just, based on injuries and things like that. But also, just if everyone's healthy, if there's games, depending on the hot hand, you ride with Achane certain games. Even Jaylen Wright later on in the season, once he gets his footing, he gets more looks, as he builds a comfortability within the scheme. And to me, I do think Achane is the most talented of the group. But Mostert still plays his part. Still, pretty, like, you don't see running backs last this long in this league. So you got to give Raheem a big credit for that. The touchdown percentage he was putting up last year was insane. Still productive. Still just a solid veteran presence to have in that room. Understands the scheme very well. He's been in it a very long time. He's actually, I think one of the things is the Dolphins run a lot of outside zone, a lot of work a lot of crack tosses, pin and pull, stuff like that. And while Mostert, Achane, Wright can all do that stuff, they all are better in like some of the gap scheme inside zone stuff than I think people give them credit for. The Dolphins just don't run a ton of it. But Mostert clearly has the speed to capture that edge, but also, hit up through holes. He does a very good job, I think, of transitioning downhill off of one cut, staying square. I think he's definitely more of that one cut mold type runner, but definitely feel good about Mostert. And he's reliable as a receiver out of the backfield, making, some good hand catches. But yeah, not too much to think about there. When it comes down to it, when it comes to Raheem, not too much to talk about. We already kind of know the player that he's going to be. I think long term, he's not really probably a part of your long term plans, which is fine. That's kind of where Achane and Wright come into play. I think Wright is kind of there to potentially fill in that Mostert role when he eventually leaves, because they kind of have actually, similar types of skill sets, in my opinion, while Achane is even just a different level. Like, what Achane is so good, man. Like, I'm a huge Achane fan. He's so much more than just speed, which is where he'll get most of his credit. Like, obviously, well, you can see it on this type of play. This is like the most home run hitting play he probably had all season, just like when he hit that hole. It was perfectly blocked, but you can just see him destroying angles from the safety. That's probably the most important. My favorite parts of the play is usually the initial part and how they set up the blocks. How he presses the outside, the vision they show, the footwork. On this play, there wasn't anything too crazy about it. The hole was just blocked up so perfectly. Really credit the O-line. But then you can see his ability to just bend these things back to the outside or cut it back to the inside and just destroy angles from safety if they stop their feet. He's going to outrun them. Like, he's just so explosive. Also has better contact balance, his footwork. I just feel like he's such a well-rounded player. I am super, super, super duper high on Devon Achane. Breaks more tackles than I think, giving credit for. Think has a good feel for the plays. Like, maybe this play is not a bad example of it. This is more of like a wind back toss. You can see angled. We'll go back and look at this a little more stuff. Like, angled, you hit the toss. Dolphins I actually love this concept in the Dolphins offense because they love to run a lot of tosses where you're trying to capture the outside. This one with like the lead toss looks like it's, but he winds it back to hit this unblocked guy. And I like how Achane works off the back of Ingold right here, but stays skinny, stays up on his feet, works in the interior between the tackles here, doing the little things right, breaking tackles, but usually from like guys who are known for their breakaway speed type runners, not a lot of them can do this stuff in between the tackles, making a guy miss in a tight space like that, while also showing some great contact balance and, some toughness to work that stuff. Very, very impressive. And that stuff's all over the film, along with the big plays, which happen a lot. But yeah. And then, obviously, I think the biggest thing... Oh, this is a play I wanted to look at, actually. This one right here. So we had Achane in the backfield, working, some more inside zone, mid zones type stuff, which I want to see more from the Dolphins. I feel like inside zone's just one of the more basic concepts that's, run in the NFL and the run concept game, but Dolphins don't run a ton of it. I just love the footwork here, the anticipation, like how he reads and processes all of this happening up front. It's the split zone action. Tight end kicks out here. He's reading the flow of this. This guy comes in unblocked at the second level, and he just makes him miss very, very quickly. It's I believe that's Taron Johnson, their nickel. He makes a miss within the hole, but with great feet, opens up those hips, points to toe, and then he still gets upfield, activates those yards. This is something you got to be able to do at the next level, and he does it so well. Combined, with that explosive speed, which gets talked about the most stuff with Achane, but just the Dolphins offense in general, which obviously is important, but a lot of these players, the reason they're so good is because they're more than just speed. Like, the receivers know how to run routes, get open like that, and that's where I want to see Achane take his next game to the next level. We've been talking about it. Him as a receiver, I think Achane is one of the most important players on the Dolphins offense this season with their upcoming success and the versatility that he can be used. I think coming out of the backfield, allowing him to kind of be that guy in the backfield this season for them. Like, he doesn't need to have the most touches every game. Maybe sometimes you want to limit his touches, but he needs to be giving very valuable touches in the way he's used, and even in possibly as a decoy with the way they motion people around and getting him mismatched on linebackers at the second level. It's all very definitely interesting. But yeah, huge fan of Achane, obviously. Been a huge fan for a long time. And let me tighten this down real quick. There we go. And yeah, he'll be just fine coming to the Dolphins, already on the Dolphins. But yeah, I think he'll have an even better second season when he already was breaking records in his first season, which is very, very crazy. And then we get to Jaylen Wright, the Dolphins rookie pickup. This guy is coming to the Dolphins, coming from Tennessee. Now, when you see it right away, the first glance is like, they added Jaylen Wright, another absolute speed demon, like the miles per hour this guy's putting up. Obviously also has the 40 time to show it too. That's something that he shows really well. But I think another underrated aspect to his game, while also having good size, like he's a quality sized running back, very physical, can break tackles. I actually think he does a good job with some of like his jump cutting stuff. Let me see if I can. Oh, that's not here. I think here's a good example. Pretty bad quality, but like watch him just read jump cut to get over to a gap. I think some guys, especially guys of his size, known more for speed, to like make this level of lateral cut and then still get downhill pretty quickly without wasting too much time. And then they also like hitting these people at the second, third level, plowing through them. He's definitely a tough runner to bring down, which is great. Definitely feel very confident with that pickup. I think the one concern you have is looking at that Tennessee offense. We've talked about it before. Is it's not the greatest, like, when it comes to like translating to offensive success in the NFL. Like, it's not a very, NFL style offense, and they didn't do a lot of outside zone stuff. A lot of the stuff the Dolphins will do. His skill set does fit it, so I do think he can. I do feel pretty confident that he can adjust to the Dolphins system, but it should be pretty fun. Hey, Ryder, big fan. My whole key for the season is the O-line. I want to see more quality depth. I think it's very important. Yeah, offensive line, definitely a key factor. Always will be. I think the one thing, especially in the running game, the Dolphins' offensive line has to run block pretty well. The Dolphins offensively can get I don't think they're the best pass blocking O-line. They're actually statistically not the best pass blocking O-line, but I do think McDaniel and Tua do a good job of kind of making those weaknesses not as apparent, which is a good thing. But yeah, the O-line is always being good up front is just always important, no matter what team you are. But for the Dolphins, it's definitely been a struggle for them in the past. And within McDaniel's system, it's not as important, but it's definitely still a key important to the team's success. Especially the running game. Running game is built off the O-line and being able to bully your opponents and things like that. And guys that just fit within your system that know how to reach, block, cut people off. Let me move that there. Okay. Yeah, so those are the top three guys. Mostert, Achane, Jaylen Wright. Your top three. You're probably going to see, I would say, the start. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Mostert is the starter all season if he stays healthy. But then there's games where Achane, gets more touches, more carries, more receptions. Even later on, Jaylen Wright sees that type of work. Just, spread the wealth, keep these guys fresh as it goes on. You have multiple guys that fit within your scheme now. And Dolphins love to run 21 personnel, so you'll see two running backs on the same field at the same time. Also, Alec Ingold. I think when it comes to Ingold, he's going to take up a running back spot as a fullback, but he's also a quality person to have back there. You think Achane will be put on the PUP to save a roster spot? Honestly, I think they're probably going to cut Achane, if I had to guess. I mean, if he's injured, they would probably put him on, whatever injury list it would end up being at the time. But yeah, I don't, I'm going to talk about Achane in a second, because we have the top three, and then after that, it's listed Achane, Jeff Wilson, and Chris Brooks. And I think out of those three, I think Achane probably has not the greatest chance of making the roster. I just don't think he's the best fit for the system. He's also he did have that injury last year, and I think Jeff Wilson also has more experience in the system, so that gives him the edge over Achane. And then I think Chris Brooks has more upside and is more of a physical runner, and I would like to see what he could bring. And talking about Chris Brooks, I made a video on him not too recently, or pretty recently, talking like a film breakdown, talking about his versatility and some of the stuff he did last season in the games he played. Looked great in the preseason, was probably their preseason all-star. And then in the regular season had some good runs late, got hurt as well, which was unfortunate. But there was one game versus the Giants where he came in for the Ingold role. He was blocking like a fullback, being moved around, he pancaked an edge. He was going out there, giving it his all, and actually looked pretty solid as a fullback role. So I wouldn't mind Brooks, if the Dolphins do keep 4 running backs, if they keep Brooks as your 4th running back, but can also even take some be your potential backup fullback if Ingold was to go down too. To give you some snaps there. Plus, he's also would be better with the ball in his hands, because sometimes Ingold would get touches. Obviously not as good as a blocker, but there's some versatility I think there to work with. That's why I'm personally on the Chris Brooks as your running back 4 train. And you never know with how injuries work with the running back room. Last year they started with 5 running backs on the roster, and then once they were able to put Wilson on the PUP list after the initial roster locks or the roster spots you have to do. This year I don't think you have to do that, so you can just put your guys that are injured on your list right away. But yeah, I think Wilson, Brooks, both are fighting for a roster spot. Same with Achane, but I just don't see him making it personally. Achane is a lot better than between the tackles than most people realize. Yeah, that is very true. I think that's just. I think, especially from like the outsider's perspective who don't watch the Dolphins offense a ton, I just feel like people just talk about the speed aspect of a lot of these players, but most of the like all the Dolphins running backs, I would say, are better between the tackles than most people realize. Some of them like if you go back and watch Texas A&M, they ran a lot of gap scheme, inside zone stuff. Mostert, if you go back and watch him when he was in San Francisco, they ran a lot of gap scheme stuff with Mostert. Like he had that like 200-yard game, right, versus Green Bay in the playoffs, and they mostly just kept hitting like the same concept over and over again. It was mostly gap scheme. And then Jaylen Wright, that's like where his experience come from. But yeah. Week 1 Jags at Dolphins. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I can't wait. It's a pretty solid game to start the season too. Jaguars versus Dolphins should be interesting. But yeah. Duval TV. Guessing you're a Jaguars fan. Definitely excited for that. I just can't wait for it to start, man. So excited. But yeah. Getting back to it with Brooks, Wilson. We'll talk about Wilson. I think I'm personally would be on the train of probably letting Jeff Wilson go, just because you're not going to keep 5 running backs, and I've already talked about the 4 running backs I prefer, but I think Wilson just isn't the same level of player as he used to be. Like, I'm not going to be mad if they keep him as a running back 4, because I actually wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Like, he obviously has a lot of experience within the system. McDaniel loves him. It's just, I don't think he has that level of explosiveness that they look for. Like, he gets the job done, but I think, and he can be, a little rough-nosed runner, but I think they could have that in Chris Brooks. I think they got more of that in Jaylen Wright now, which is great too, to run between the tackles, which I think all the Dolphins guys do, but you do need more of like a bruiser type. So if Wilson does make it, should be very interesting for sure. Run defense is going to get tested first week of the season. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the Jags running game is going to look like. I know they have ETN. I'm not sure how their O-line looks right now. I would have to. Does the Jags, who did they draft? I can't remember, but I know they have ETN. Tink Bigsby was a guy that they had some playing time last year. I'm not sure. I know he had some problems that Jaguars had problems with. We'll see how it all ends up working out. Definitely, I think it's a solid test to start at the season, because it's not like the Jags are the greatest team in the NFL, but they're definitely not a bad team either. Like, they're just a pretty solid, good team. So I think it's a nice little test to start the season. Kind of similar to what the Chargers were last year, because Chargers going into the season last year were looked at as a solid team and then ended up not being that good. But Jaguars are a pretty good team, so it'll be pretty fun. Feel like our upgraded tight end room is going to help with our run game. Yeah, I think just the upgraded passing game options, like you said, addition of OBJ, I think upgrading those positions, I think that's such a huge part of the run game to begin with, because just having Tyreek and Waddle, the Dolphins face too high a bunch, more than most teams. So you see a lot of light boxes, which is nice. So being able to take advantage of the light boxes is huge. That's why the running game is, I think the Dolphins are always going to be a pass-first team, but I do think they should lean more into the running side of things, especially in certain games, certain situations. And then when teams start to stack the boxes, that's when you go back to the passing game, and you still got to be able to function. That's why we talked about earlier, the O-lines is so important to that success. Jaguars drafted our wide receiver. Yeah, I know they drafted Brian Thomas Jr. in the first. I just don't know what they did after that. Didn't they draft a bunch of... Were they the team that drafted 2 LSU defensive linemen, if I'm not mistaken? I know they went in a couple different directions with other things. I know they brought in Gabe Davis at receiver. But yeah. Should be an interesting matchup. I think I'll definitely look into it more when the season gets closer. I'm definitely going to do a preview of the game. I'll dig into the Jaguars roster, look into the moves, and probably watch some of their films. So it'll be interesting. Definitely have more options will be key. Yeah, just people being fresh, being healthy. That was probably one of the Dolphins' biggest downfalls last season. You don't want to make excuses that it was injuries and all that, but at the end of the day, when you get hit with that many injuries, it's gonna hurt your team. So it was a combination of things, but injuries was very, very key. So having more bodies at every position will just be helpful because no team's going to stay 100% healthy the whole season. We already talked about it earlier, like the Dolphins already put 2 rookies on list. Mark Perry was put on the active / non-football injury list. I don't know if you guys saw that, the UDFA, and then wide receiver Taj Washington, the USC receiver 7th rounder, was put on the active / physically unable to perform list. Which, of course, that happens. I wonder what this means. Like, I want to see what the seriousness of this is, because if it's serious, if it's like a kind of serious thing where they're not going to be able to practice for training camp, but then like they're healthy enough when the season starts, then you probably just have to like let both of them go and then hope you can maybe keep them on the practice squad if that's what you want to do, or just let them go, because I want to keep Taj Washington around. Or it could be super serious and they just keep him on that list all year long, and then keep him for next year, which is always a possibility. Or it's just like a very quick thing. They're sitting out like a few days, a week. But I hope it's quick and they get to come back and, at least have a chance to show what they have in training camp, Because that would suck for them, because they're both fighting for a spot. Neither of them are, like, I would say both of them are on the outside of the 53 currently. So not being able to practice or play in the preseason would be very detrimental to them. And then, so we talked about pretty much everyone back on the roster except Ahmed. We didn't really dig into Ahmed. I just wasn't a huge fan of Savon last season. He did a couple of things nice. I just think they kept trying to, I think the usage kind of bothered me the most. And they kept, because Ahmed saw most of his playing time when Achane was hurt during that stretch of games. And they kept trying to use Ahmed in the Achane role, and he's just not that level of player. Like, Ahmed has quick feet, good feet, and can do some good things to make guys miss in those tight spaces, but he's not that guy that's going to capture the edge on tosses. They kept trying to work these toss plays to him, all these types of plays where you get him out in space, and he just doesn't have that level of burst that you want, especially for a guy that's not the biggest, not going to break too many tackles. Like, you got to have this different level of athleticism if you're not going to be a guy that can physically overcome it too. And it's not like he has top tier vision or anything, which you definitely need at the running back position. So to me, I think it's time for Ahmed to move on to another team. I think he's still like an NFL level player, but I think it's time for that ship has sailed, or potentially go on to the practice squad. We'll see. Dolphins didn't add, I don't think they added anything in the running back room other than Jaylen Wright. So you might see them potentially pick up someone to add on the practice squad at the running back position, or just keep someone like an Ahmed. Or maybe they could keep Chris Brooks on the practice squad if they end up, deciding to just keep 3 guys. Or they keep Jeff Wilson instead, But yeah, that's the whole running back room. Wanted to keep it. I mean, it was pretty quick, obviously, because the running back room is very, very small. So if you guys have any questions, specifics about the running back room that you guys, or just any comments you guys want to make, or just anything about the Dolphins in general, because I feel pretty it's just another room the Dolphins had where I think that they slightly upgraded. It wasn't a room they had problems with. Like last year, the running back room was solid. It was quite good for most of the season. They had their injuries, but they just added Jaylen Wright to the mix, and then you got to hope they stay healthy. So adding a nice rookie with a good skill set that just you see can making a year 1 impact when you got him for in the 4th round, I think that's a pretty solid add. And then Mostert obviously put up great stats last year. Achane, when he was playing, was dynamite. I think one of the most explosive rookie seasons you probably will ever see at that position. Like, his yards per carry was absolutely insane. And then I think there's something there to work with Chris Brooks, and Jeff Wilson isn't a terrible depth player to have either. So definitely a pretty fun group. And yeah. I think they slightly upgraded at most positions. The only position we didn't go through, I think, was quarterback. Like receiver, they upgraded. And most of these positions, groups they upgraded at, it wasn't like they crazy upgraded or anything. But they upgraded a lot of them. That's good work, especially with the situation they were in cap-wise. They didn't have crazy amount of picks. Pretty good, because quarterback room stayed the same, running back room slightly upgraded, receiver room slightly upgraded, tight end room slightly upgraded. I would say O-line is probably the only position group on the offense that downgraded, and I would say it's specifically right guard, because I would say the tackle room you technically upgraded. You just added more bodies to the same room. Center it depends on your view of Connor Williams, and to me it's more of a wash because I'm pretty high on Aaron Brewer and I like Connor Williams a lot too. So I think that's more of a even one. And then left guard, you're probably still gonna have Isaiah Wynn, which is what you had last season before he got injured. And then defensively, like D tackle, you downgraded at the starting position, but I would say you upgraded depth wise. Like you have way more bodies that I think you can get playing time, but you did downgrade in the sense of you lost Christian Wilkins. Edge you upgraded as long as everyone comes back healthy. Like Phillips and Chubb were great last year, but they're just not healthy right now. But you upgraded the guys behind them, and once that room is fully healthy, it's definitely an upgrade. I would say off-ball linebackers you upgraded. Just Jordan Brooks and Anthony Walker are an upgrade over who they're taking over for. And then what else did we got? Corners, I would say we slightly upgraded because I would take Fuller over Howard. And then safety is probably a wash in my opinion. It's at least a wash. I could also see that as a slightly upgraded position. I guess you probably have 3 safeties now that I would give it, because once you sign Marcus May, because actually Elliott wasn't that bad last season with the Dolphins, and I think Poyer will probably play around the same level, maybe slightly better, but then adding Marcus May as a third safety is pretty good too. What's up? What's Jaylen Wright's ceiling / floor in your opinion? Like, are you talking like maybe like a player comparison thing? Because I actually don't think like Mostert's a bad sort of comparison for him. I think he has a pretty high ceiling too. I think like floor wise, I don't really see Jaylen Wright being a bust. I see there's a world where he could just be like an average level running back. Like to me, that's kind of where I see like his floor just being like an average level player. But he's in the perfect system for his skill set, so I think his ceiling's pretty high. I think Achane has a higher ceiling than him personally, but I feel like he could be like a top 10 running back in the league. But floor wise, probably just like average, middle of the road running back. But yeah. Yeah, that is the running back room. Hopefully everyone can stay healthy. We're almost there. I mean, technically, rookies reported to training camp today. We haven't really seen anything about it yet. At least that I don't think so, other than that they put those guys on those injury lists, which is unfortunate. But next week everyone will report, and then I'm guessing we're going to start seeing, all the practice reports, which will be interesting. And then once that goes for a little bit, then I think they're opening up training camp to the public, which will get even more news about players and how people are looking. And then the preseason we'll get in August. I believe it starts pretty early August, so we'll finally see some football action. And I will definitely be posting a bunch of film breakdowns during the preseason, just seeing, especially on like the younger guys, the guys who are kind of like fighting to make the team, and then the rookies who we're seeing for the first time. I did that last year, and it seemed like people liked that a lot, which I am definitely going to keep, doing that type of stuff, because I think the preseason is kind of underrated when it comes to, the end of the roster players. You can actually find some good players there. It's happened the past 2 preseasons that I've covered, that I found some people that are like, oh, those guys actually are, NFL level players, and I wasn't sure beforehand, but now get to see them in action, and it turned out that they were. So, yeah, excited for this season to start. I'll probably have a film breakdown tomorrow. I might think about doing it on, I think I'm going to do a Chop Robinson film breakdown, but it's going to be like a very specific Chop Robinson film breakdown about how I think where he's going to make the biggest impact next season, his biggest like usage, and it's going to be more of like when it's like the obvious third down and him like standing up on the interior, not a lot of the outside stuff, which I think will be a fun breakdown to do, like a little more specific usage for a player, which is kind of what I just did for the OBJ video. Yeah. Thank you guys for watching.